Hey guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and today I'd like to talk about this quote by Margaret Mead, the American cultural anthropologist, who said that children must be taught how to think and not necessarily what to think. So, probably here was this cultural anthropologist who understood that the foundation of our being gets laid in our formative years, in our childhood. Just like the foundation of any building, even our foundation gets laid when it's getting formed. It gets informed when it's getting formed. That is essentially in our initial years. And thankfully, since we are not concrete structures, we are human beings who are constantly developing and evolving, we do change. Not only in our physical appearances, not only just in our bodies, but even our brain, which is embedded in the body, also changes. Which is embodied in the body, also changes. And if that change happens out of awareness, I believe it results in evolution. And maybe in order to get aware of our own selves, we essentially all need to go into our formative foundation years. If we all want to evolve, I believe we all need to be able to contemplate. We all need to be able to reflect on why we are the way we are. What informed us in order to believe in certain things? What informed us? What formed us to be able to behave in a certain way? What informed us, what formed us that enables us or disables us take certain decisions in life? What enables us, what disables us from changing? So once again, in order to be able to reflect and to contemplate upon that, I would like to take one of my favorite movies over here, PK. So here was this person who came from a different space and a place. So of course he had a different way of thinking. Of course he had a different way of seeing the world, of interacting with the world. So when he first landed, he landed like everyone else, without clothing, like we all do when we first enter the world. And then gradually layers and layers and layers of clothing get added on top of us. And from my understanding, clothing here is just not physical clothing or fashion as he says it. They are just not garments. They are metaphors representing a lot of aspects. They are clothings of our beliefs. They are clothings of the way we think. They are clothings about our identities, about the cultural norms. They are clothings that dictate our habits and our behaviors. They are clothings that dictate our choices and our decisions. So as he stays here, he begins to understand that clothing is an essential part of most of the human race. So he starts to wear clothing like us. And of course, in the beginning, he experiments a bit. And as he experiments, of course, he gets ridiculed and laughed at by other people around, which enables him look at things a little differently. He starts to wear clothing associated with men. And probably this is also the very first time that he realizes that he belongs to the gender that is called as the man. It is also probably the very first time that he understands the difference between men and women. It is probably the first time that he understands that there are gender differences, that there are gender norms, that there are certain things acceptable and unacceptable as a man, and that there are certain things acceptable and unacceptable as a woman. That there is not only a gender difference, but probably there's gender disparity and to some extent even gender inequality. And if we can just shift our lens a little, we'll probably be able to understand that in all likelihood, the place that he came from had none of these concepts. That gender was not a thing that they identified with. That there probably would be no specific defining norms for this or that gender. That there would not be separate rules and laws, even in the Constitution, for separate genders because they don't exist in the first place. That there would be no discrimination between humans. That probably to a great extent, law would not then need to be enforced in such a society. that probably law would then be a natural outcome of a very just system. Enforcement of law would be the most unnatural thing that would happen in such a space and a place. And probably it was for the very first time in his life that he got identified and even defined by a certain gender, certain norms, certain rules associated with that gender type. And he learnt and he adapted to the norms of that gender type. It was also over here that for the very first time he was given a certain name, and almost everybody that he met addressed him as PK. And if we can once again shift the lens a bit, we'll also understand that it was probably for the very first time he identified with a name. It was also probably for the first time he must have wondered, wow, people here are so amazing, people here are so intelligent, everybody that I meet knows my name. I'm the only one who's not aware of my name. And yet at the same time, there's another quote which says, if everybody is thinking alike, actually nobody is thinking. And if we can look at that aspect from this lens, we'll get a very different narrative. It would make us question, how is everybody thinking alike? How did everybody imagine? How did everybody come up with the exact same name for him? Why did no one give him a different name? And though he acknowledged all of these tiny bits that form a part of our identity, there was a beautiful aspect of not being attached to these identities. In his own way, he kind of makes us understand that these are functional identities. But as a life form, I do not get defined by it. They can form a reference point to understand and to interact with something or somebody, but they are only parts of the identity, and that our identity as a life form is constantly evolving. It cannot necessarily be captured in a 4x4 or 40x40 framework. The framework is just a reference point for the ever-evolving picture that it has tried to capture. And somewhere through this movie, he also told us to question the clothings that we wear, the clothing, the mental clothings that start to define us. And somewhere he opened the dialogue to inquire, to question, where did you get these clothings from? Who handed you over these clothings? Who handed you over these ideas? Who gave you this prescription list? Did you even look at the prescription list? Who gave you these identities? Are they your own? Did you custom make them for yourself? Did you tailor make them for yourself? Or have they been just rotating around and you've been wearing them without even looking into them? Who set these norms, and are they true for you? Do they enable you or disable you, or probably do both at the same time? Can you look into these clothings, these ideas, these concepts, and make them evolve for your own self? And unless we reflect on that, unless we go to the foundation of these concepts, of these attributes of ourselves, we'll probably never understand where the building stands and why it stands the way it stands, why it interacts the way it interacts with every other individual, why it behaves the way it behaves within ourselves and within our communities, within our interactions that informed, formed, and shaped us. Let's try and reflect on all of these aspects which we call as the self. Let's try and do that for ourselves, and I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contents of my videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.